5:30. It's the 14th of July, 2022. It's time to start the Historic Landmark Commission meeting this evening. Can everyone hear me? Am I speaking loud enough for everyone? A little bit louder? All right. So I will try to put on my non-church voice and speak loud enough so everyone can hear me this evening. We have 2 hearings this evening. 2 issues before the commission this evening. We're also aware that there's multiple competing events elsewhere that some of us would like to be involved with. So I'd like to remind the commissioners, let's be efficient and focus this evening and do our work expeditiously. So first off, let's start with the approval of the minutes for the 1st of June 2022 meeting. Can I have a motion, ask for a motion for that, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I'll second it.
Seconded? Very well. We need to be formal with this, so let's go in order, please. Babs?
Aye.
John?
Abstain.
That's correct. Aiden?
Aye. Oh, sorry. Yes, aye.
Very well. Kenton?
Aye.
Michael is not here. And Amanda? Very well. And I would vote aye as well. So those minutes are approved as noted. Moving on to the second item, let's have a report from the chair and the vice chair. As chair, I do not have any reports this evening.
I do not.
Very well. Let's have a report from the director, if any.
Yeah, I just have a couple things. Good evening, everyone. We had some consultants in town that provided a briefing to the city council on Tuesday. We had some consultants in town that provided a briefing to city council on Tuesday about the Thriving in Place study. They did publish their phase 1 report, which is very thorough and difficult to take in, to understand the displacement and gentrification that's happening in our city. I would encourage everybody to look at the website. It's called Thriving in Place, slc.org. And you will scroll down kind of towards the section that's called Dig Deeper and click on the phase 1 summary report. You'll be able to see all the data analysis in that. And that's all I have to report this evening. Thank you.
Very well. Thank you. All right, let's now move to public comments. So now we'll hear public comments not pertaining to the 2 items this evening, and limit those comments to 2 minutes apiece. I don't believe I'm not seeing any public comments. Is that correct? Very well. Seeing that there are none, let's close the public comment session and move to public hearings. First item is new construction for Station 424 multifamily residential development. And that's going to be presented by Lex.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. This is a request for new construction of a multifamily development in the Central City Historic District. And it consists primarily of a 249-unit development, and the proposed development will include multiple unit types consisting of studio 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units within a single building on the site. The building is proposed to be approximately 80 feet tall at its highest point. We as planning staff are recommending approval. Just to get you oriented, this is a kind of a bird's eye view looking from the northeast to the southwest. So here you have 700 east and 400 south. Here's the track station out here. Here's the gas station on the corner. There are several 3 contributing structures to the local historic district here. One of them is the Macarthur house, office building, and then there's a, I would call it a mansion because it's a big house. And to the south of that is the Big Daddy's Pizza. business. This is a rendering of what this project will look like from the 700 East Streetway. Got the courtyard type development here in the middle. This would be more of a pedestrian view of that 700 East facade. This would be looking to the southwest. You see the Speedway gas station on the corner there. So this building wraps around the gas station. And this is the view from the 400 South facade. The gas station's here. Applebee's is located here. Applebee's and
Chili's. It's Chili's.
Chili's, sorry. Yeah.
They're the same. Are they tearing down that restaurant?
Not as part of this project, no.
Bad. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Chili's. I haven't eaten there, so I'm sorry to confuse those. And then the Trader Joe's complex is next to that. Here's a street view, and this is a series of photographs that have been cobbled together to kind of give you an idea of what that looks like at this point. Here's the modern display buildings here. This is the office building, the mansion that I was referring to, and then the Big Daddy's Pizza. And then here is a rendering of how this, of how this will look once built. And this would be the office building located to the south. So this building wraps around that. There's significant distance between the new construction and that contributing structure to the historic district. In your staff report, we've outlined some key considerations. The first one was the character of the surrounding development. There is not a whole lot of historic fabric left on that block. The first key consideration has to do with the character of the surrounding development on that block. There are 3 contributing structures, so most of the historic fabric of that block is no longer there. The second key consideration that we outlined in the staff report is how the proposal implements city goals and policies identified in master plans, and how it is in compliance with the zoning requirements. I want to back up just a little bit too. There were a couple other aspects of this project that were done at an administrative level. The applicant submitted a TSA, transit station score sheet. They well exceeded the points necessary for an administrative approval. That was approved at a staff level. And they also submitted an application for the demolition of non-contributing structures, which include the modern display building and associated warehouses. So those have already been addressed, and we're here tonight to talk about the new construction. That proposal has been reviewed in terms of the standards that are applicable. First are the TSA zoning standards. Those are outlined in attachment D in your staff report, as well as design standards that are applicable in this case have been addressed, as well as the new construction standards and the multitude of design guidelines, all 86 of them, for multifamily buildings in Salt Lake City. At this point, based on the information findings listed in the staff report, it's planning staff's opinion that the request generally meets the applicable standards for new construction in a local historic district, and therefore requests that the Historic Landmark Commission approve the request. I had received a couple of written comments regarding this proposal. Those were included in your staff report. I received one this afternoon about 4:45 that has been placed in your Dropbox, and that's the extent of the public written comment that I've received regarding the request. And I will keep it short and sweet. If you have questions of me, I'm happy to try to address those for you. If not, the applicant is here and would probably answer questions even better than I.
On that TSA score sheet, I'm trying to pull it up. Maximum building height 75 feet plus an extra story with TSA score plus minus 85 feet.
Yes.
How does that, I guess, how does that process work? And what is the proposed height of the building?
The tallest point of the building doesn't exceed 80 feet. They can get an extra, I think it's a story or 10 feet. I can't remember exactly how it's put in the code. But if they exceed the 125 points in the score sheet, which they well do, they got 183, then they're eligible for that additional building height. That's why they can exceed the 75 feet.
So Lex, they comply with all the zoning regulations. They're not asking for any sort of variance.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, Lex, I had one question, and it has to do with, I think it's a bit out of our purview as the commission, but in reviewing the plans, in particular drawing part 1, was there any consideration for access from 7th East into the parking garage? And the way I read and understand the plans, all of the parking is coming in and out of Green Street, the alley.
No, there's actually 2 access points for this project. One is off Fuller Avenue, which is off of 700, and Fuller. Sorry, can you just speak into the mic? Am I not speaking loud enough? Oh, I'm screaming.
We have this issue with every meeting. There's something about the audio system. We're sorry, and there's white noise behind us from the AC. So these are the conditions we have. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'll start again so everyone can hear. Is this better? When I was taking a look at the plans, it looked like there was an access point from Green. There was also an access point from 7th East, but it looked like it went into a parking garage that was dedicated for visitors. So I was just curious, was there any consideration for access into the parking garage for the residents from 7th East as well?
My understanding is that visitors and residents can access either point. So I'm going to defer to the applicant to better address that question for you.
Fair enough. Okay. In the reading of the plans, it looked like there was a gate or something at the visitor area. If indeed that was open, then I didn't have any issues, because it looked like then residents could go past the visitor staging area there, about a dozen spaces, and then into the garage proper.
Yeah, I'll let the applicant address that for you.
Very good.
Sorry, I was just reviewing what was sent in the Dropbox, and I didn't remember seeing what he's talking about there. So on 7th East, they're going to turn before the pizza place?
Yes, it's to the north of the pizza place by 2 properties. So Fuller Avenue runs east-west, and people right now use it to access the Trader Joe's. There's usually a big sign out there that
Don't
says,
go there,
don't
right.
go through here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the access points that will access the garage. The other access point comes off of Green Street, which is a public street.
Right. So the owners and those tenants, and I go there all the time because that's my property manager that I use, and there's a big sign out there, don't use this street here.
Right.
But the people will be able to use that street?
No, because part of that street is actually owned by the applicant tonight. They want to build over that property.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Commissioners, any other questions for Lex? Very good. So I think let's have the applicant presentation of the proposal, please. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, guys. I'll try to speak really loud. I'm
sorry, can you please state your name for the record?
Yeah. My name's Caleb Larson. I work for Envision Architectural Group. We're the designer on the project. Also here tonight is Gonzalo Calquin. He's also a design team member, and the property owners are here as well. I'll kind of go through some points that were major points in our design, and I'll also clarify that access question as well. Just starting in part 1. Let's see if this. Update. Sorry. Let's see if this will load. So, our first point is, the project, we wanted to design something that supported the master plan for the area, as well as, meet all the standards in the historic district. As was stated earlier, we're not asking for any sort of, exceptions, or it's our position that the project as designed meets the standards and the ordinances and is respectful to the character of the surrounding developments. As you can see on the site plan here, this is the Alta survey of the existing Fuller Avenue that was discussed. The vehicular access points were a big, item on this design. There are multiple curb cuts very close to this intersection that's very busy. That's it's a big intersection. There's like 8 lanes in each direction. So, and as part of the design guidelines of the historic district, we tried to consolidate vehicular accesses where they made sense and were not backing people onto those major thoroughfares. This is more of a, kind of a setback diagram, but you can see here is Fuller Avenue, and there's an existing cross-access agreement right here, which we have preserved and used as kind of a common court to access the parking stalls here, as well as access the garage. I'm going to open up part 2. Hopefully it doesn't take as long to load. So here in this site plan, you can see that common court here where the access to the parking garage, and as Lex stated, and the chair stated as well, there is a visitor parking area here and then a secured gate in the back that residents can go through and park. So really the parking is divided. It's slightly heavier on Green Street as far as stall count goes, but it's split between almost half the residents accessing off 7th East and almost, slightly more than half accessing off of Green Street. And here's a plan of the internal layout. So you can see that there's the public parking, visitor parking close to the leasing area, and then the secured gate here. And then I'll try to keep this short as well. Some of the other key considerations were the access points, keeping traffic off of the large thoroughfares, the material palette, as you can see in the elevations. We've used brick to present the building, the mass, in scale with, we tried to scale down the base to be more in scale with the neighboring development. As you can see in these drawings, they're not very big on the screen, but as it relates to the more historic properties, we've presented a base that's, a 3-story brick, kind of more in scale with a smaller commercial building that is common in the historic district. And then as you move farther north and farther in toward the block, we gain a little bit more height. We've chopped off, a story at the street level and stepped the secondary facades back. And that's also demonstrated in the section views that you guys have in this packet. So I probably don't need to walk you through every sheet, but those are the key considerations we had there. And I'll end with that. And if you guys have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I had a question about the access on Green Street and the existing residences there.
Yes.
I know we had a public comment that was submitted with concerns about the height on the interior there. I know that we're not here to make those types of decisions, but I just wonder if you could just
sure.
talk about the consideration of the height there on the 7th East versus Green Street.
Sure. And we did review that comment. We appreciate, the input and the support for, density and multifamily in this area. We all understand it's kind of needed. The decision was based mainly on the guidelines, the historic district guidelines, as well as, city planning documents where we're trying to get more mid-height or mid-block has a little bit more height. And as, you get out toward those major thoroughfares is where we've varied the mass more and broken up the building into smaller. So while you're driving down those roads, you're not seeing a giant wall of buildings. And the other point to make is the facade on Green Street is only 70 feet wide, slightly more, that's facing Green Street, and is actually only overlaps the townhomes by 12 feet or so at this point that's across from them. And let's see, let me open up another drawing that shows that a little more clearly. So that was kind of the consideration of varying the mass a little bit more as you get out toward, this is a pretty good example. You can see, as you hit the corner, you're going to perceive these, you're going to feel that undulation and the change in plane and the change in height as you're on that corner, which is going to be the busiest intersection and where people are going to experience the project the most. We are sensitive to the neighbors on the west and don't want to, tower over them, but where it is an allowed height and there's not a lot of historic character on Green Street, especially on our side, that was kind of the reasoning behind getting the height there. Mm-hmm. Let's see if I can.
Good. Is that it?
Yeah.
All right.
That's it for me.
Very good.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Do you mind just going to the rendering above this one?
Yes. Sorry. How's that?
That's great.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm just looking at how on the south eastern portion, sort of how the rooftop will be perceived from the right of way. It looked like if you go a rendering above.
Yes. Let's see.
Yeah, from the pedestrian view, that will be minimal, but I just kind of wanted to see that more
Yes.
crossroads.
Let me give you,
imaging.
how about this one? So this is from kind of across 7th East. Is this a good
Yeah,
view to
that's
see
great.
what we're saying?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so we did break up the mass again. This is presenting a smaller base, and then we've stepped the floors back and are 1 story fewer than is allowed and is planned for the rest. So we did that, that's the closest we get to the other historic properties, and we wanted to kind of scale that massing up as we got farther away.
Very well. Commissioners, any other questions for the applicant or for Lex? Before we open, all right. Let's open
Thank
the
you.
public hearing. We've got 5 minutes. All other members of the public should have 2 minutes to ask questions concerning this. And I do have 2 cards here, one from Cindy Cromer.
Let me start. My name is still Cindy Cromer. Let me start with what I do not understand. I do not understand why this very substantial project involving new construction with complex ingress, egress, abutting 2 historic structures and near a third on the same block face has not been scheduled for a work session with the Commission. You held work sessions for projects of such scale for Trolley Square Ventures, the Masonic Temple Apartments, and Western Gardens in the same historic districts. Parcels which are part of this project abut the former Every Blooming Thing building and the Macarthur house. Only the Macarthur house is identified as contributory in the staff report. There are no renderings in the staff report which show the relationship between the new construction and the 3 historic structures on 700 East, 2 of them abutting this project. You have received visual information which was far superior for single-family infill houses in other historic districts. The lack of such drawings is completely unacceptable, but consistent with the treatment of the Central City Historic District as a stepchild. Additionally, the project by Cowboy Partners at Liberty Square was very carefully crafted with numerous revisions and reduction in the scale, in addition to the adaptive reuse of the mid-century ensign floral building on 600 East. The circulation issues affecting Liberty Square apartments are significant, as indicated by the comments from Cowboy Partners and the city's own transportation division. I am asking you to table this proposal until the applicant provides renderings consistent with the ones you have received for other projects involving new construction. If you visited the site, you know that the circulation is torturous, and while transportation is not typically the focus of this commission, proceeding without a more adequate plan with the upcoming Alta project at the Xerox building will, in my opinion, degrade the existing historic resources and the carefully crafted infill project and adaptive reuse at Liberty Square. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cindy. We had a second comment from Tom Segura.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for the opportunity of being with you tonight. My name is Tom Segura. I'm the owner of my wife and I are the owners of the Macarthur building. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay, that better?
Better.
Okay, I want everybody to hear what I'm going to say. Am I speaking with the Planning Commission, the Landmark Historical Society?
This is the Historic Landmark Commission.
Okay, perfect. Okay, first I'm going to talk in support of the project, and then I'm going to talk in opposition to the project because the conditions changed. Initially, the Wright Development Company wanted to purchase our property, and it was going to be part of this. So if you can remember there's a little building just to the south of there that was going to be part of this project. As Wright Development Company went through the process of doing their due diligence and their title search, it was revealed that we are considered a contributing historical building, which I don't quite understand. I wasn't aware that we had that we were that, but that ended the sale of the building because they didn't want to pursue it here with you. Now, here's where my other hat for opposition comes into it. You've been talked about how there's ingress you can come in from Green Street, you can come in from 7th, but you can't pass through. That, whatever you want to call it, my attorneys told me after 10 years it's called a, what do you call it? Public access. After 20 years, it's a prescriptive access, and that access has been open since 1961 when the Macarthur House was built. So that has been open a long time. It's been a thoroughfare for not just us, but the neighbors all around. Our tenants, our customers, and clients, as well as the community at large, use Fuller Avenue. And Fuller Avenue is not a city street. It does have a city sign, but it has been a thoroughfare for, like I say, over 60 years. The closure of Fuller Avenue to everyday traffic to enhance a building project will create a hardship not only to us and to our tenants, but to the entire surrounding community. Our investment in our property will be directly impacted because of the access to additional needed parking via Fuller Avenue. We have very, very limited parking at Macarthur House. And if you've been there, Ms. DeLay, you're aware of the parking problem that's there. Hence, people park over near Trader Joe's on Green Street, wherever they can find a parking place, and then they walk over through the access on Fuller Street. Closing that would be a severe hardship not only on us financially, but on all of our tenants. It would make renting the property in the future very, very difficult. It would make selling the property nearly impossible because we are completely enclosed there. However, the situation could be completely remedied through the historical landmark commissions. I just want to present a couple of things to you. I'm sure you're all aware of this was produced, the RLS, back in 2013. Are you all familiar with this? This is the RLS produced by, well, it was commissioned by the Salt Lake County. Oh, it's in this one. Salt Lake County, not the...
Excuse me,
Salt Lake County Corporation Planning Division. And it was Commission to the Certus Environmental Solutions Company, and they made some recommendations to the Historic Landmark Society. I'm going to go through just a few of those very quickly. On page number 11 in that document, it says, and this is talking about how...
Excuse me, sir. Can we pause for just one moment?
You bet.
Thank you.
I believe our 2 minutes is up for the speaker. I believe the speaker's time is up.
Have you?
I believe the things that I have to say are significant. Can my wife speak now? Okay, can I have her time? Okay, they give me your time. All right. I just going back to this document that was commissioned by the Planning Commission and given to the Historic Landmark Council. These are just a few of the recommendations that they made. On page 11, it says zoning ordinance changes open the door for, again, this is talking about the whole district from nearly South Temple to 9th South and 7th East to 5th East, and how kind of the midsection from 3rd South to 5th South has really degraded with, as far as a historical landmark place, it's just so many modern buildings have been built that it's really kind of lost its historical significance. Not that there aren't significant buildings. Zoning ordinance changes open the door for increased commercial development in the central portion of the neighborhood, particularly in the area between 2nd South and 5th South. Page number 12. Commercial development during this period, 1996 through 2013, has been most active in the area between 3rd South and 5th South, creating two distinct historical residential areas separated by modern commercial district. Page 27. When the local historical district is examined as a whole, the central portion of the district between 3rd South and 5th South has been substantially compromised by the intrusion of modern commercial and multifamily residential development. The intrusion is so substantial as to effectively create two separate historical sites, North Central City and South Central City historical sites. Aside from the landscape median on 6th East, which everybody's aware of, the big, about 10 yards wide, aside from that, there is very little visually tying these two areas together as a single historical landmark, let alone a cohesive district. And this is right verbatim out of that document. And finally, on page 30, it gives its recommendations, which you received. Based on the integrity of the local historical district and interactions with the district residents, Certus, the company who performed the RLS, recommends several actions. Amend the boundary of the local historic district. That's the first one, and that's the one I'm going to address. Amend the local district boundary. The boundary of the local historical district should be adjusted in one of two ways, either to create a single district with one...
That's time. Thank
Please,
you.
can I finish? There's another 90 seconds.
That's up to the chair.
It's one thing when the developer can come and he can spend 30 minutes talking to you, and I can't...
Chair's discretion.
Pardon me?
It's the chairperson's discretion as to whether to allow additional time.
Okay, finally, this is the final sentence. It says, the local historic district boundary could be adjusted to exclude the central area, i.e. the area between 3rd South and 5th South. That could be absolutely excluded as part of this historic district. I'm not asking for that. I'm simply asking for one of two things. Either you can change the designation of our building from historically significant to historically insignificant, then they can go ahead and build their project the way it was planned originally. Or I have to go ahead and seek out, well, we've already started a lawsuit against the developers to maintain that access open, the prescriptive public access, and there's a mitigation or arbitration coming up in August. So either way, I hate to be suing people. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time and your patience in talking with me.
I have a question of you, however, Mr. Chair. Do you know why your building is historically significant?
No, I don't. I have no idea.
Okay.
Can someone tell me? I can understand my next door neighbor was built in the late 1800s, right. the mansion. Macarthur House was built in 1961. It's out of cinder block, steel, and some glass.
Right.
There's a lot of buildings like that in Salt Lake.
We can answer questions after the public comment period is over.
Right.
Look at.
We have two other public comments. Let's go to the first one. Steve Murdock.
Steve Murdock.
Steve Murdock. I'm here with my wife, Danelle Murdock. We are Manor House Properties, who own the people referring to it as the mansion. It's the Hollister Hancock Mansion. It was built 1880, 1890. We've owned the property about 7 years, or actually 9 years. As the developer said that they are being sensitive to the neighbors on the west, I don't believe that they are being sensitive to the property owners to the south. Traffic coming out of just 7th East and only out on 7th East or Green Street will make it difficult for, actually not my neighbor, but for us and our employees to leave our business at high traffic times with the sidewalk. We are concerned about the development going through with our neighbor, the Macarthur house, because of when it was built, we feel that there was damage done to our building. That has been rectified by the previous owners, and feel that as the development takes place, we want them to be sensitive to our structure and not cause damage to that structure. That modern display surrounds our whole building, and it is 1890, and this is a historic district area. There needs to be some respect for that building. I also want to say that just south of us, the pizza place is scheduled to be torn down, so we will be surrounded by this wall along 7th East without any respect to the historic district by the developer. And we are trying to update our building and keep it sound, structurally sound, even though there's decay and issues with the building. We are trying to keep it there and be a pleasant site for the community and green space that is in front of the building that many animals like to smell around on. So
Very well.
that's it for my comments. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Murdock. The next is Danelle Murdock.
My name's Danelle Murdock. Again, the property owner of the mansion. My biggest concern that we see, well, first of all, we've lost every view that this house has had. We have no view of the mountains looking east. We have no view of the mountains looking west. We will now have no view looking north, which we have not had, and we will have no view south. We will be in a concrete jungle, seriously. Which is sad, because this house was built and had incredible views. It was a matriarch of the street, and it continues to be that. And it's the sole home on the 4th South Street, only. And we've chosen to preserve it. We've put a fortune into it. It's incredible inside. Come on by. My biggest concern is traffic. I drive in northbound on 7th East every morning. I take a U-turn to get into my driveway. So I come around, U-turn off of 4th, and in. I almost get hit 5 times out of 10, and I have to honk my horn and pray I don't get nailed. My biggest concern, past all of this, is that the city put in a no-turn on right, going southbound on 7th East. If you are going to bring 4,000 people onto this block, which is the proposed plan, basically, you take care of the pedestrians and the cars that are forced to not go over the island that has been placed in the middle of the street for our protection to get to our property. And I also concur that there should be an easeway into the Trader Joe's property. We use it daily. My team uses it daily. Or is there, I mean, the other last question for the builders, is the garage going to be built deep into the ground? And how, it looks like it's an 8-story building. My concern is when you go into the ground, we felt the building of Liberty Square across the street, our building would shake beyond belief like the earthquake.
Understood.
We have a,
Thank you.
I was just going to say we have a dirt foundation. So,
Understood.
concerned. Thank you.
We have another applicant, or excuse me, we have another comment, public meeting comment card from Chris Zarek.
Hello, thank you very much. My name is Chris Starek. I am here representing the 79 residents of Liberty Square. We built Liberty Square. Many of those homes are on Green Street with their front door, their living room, and their bedrooms mere feet from Green Street. It sounds like most of you have read my comment that was included in the package. We are not against this project. We are not against housing. We need more housing. We need density. It sounds like there's a couple of issues that have been mentioned by the other public commenters here that could be just solved by the retaining of Fuller Avenue. Fuller Avenue right now comes in off of 700 East. It has access to both levels of the parking garage. The plans, as I understand them, it doesn't sound like there is a connection between the levels, so they are disconnected. There's no internal ramping. So 2/3 of that parking is going to have to come all the way around the block onto Green Street, hundreds of cars past Green Street. Green Street is 32 feet wide, often has people parking and stopped. There's a fire lane that's right up against the edge where that gate is. And there is a truck at Trader Joe's twice a day for several hours that loads and constricts that street. If we keep Fuller Avenue, you can get access to both levels of that parking off of Fuller Avenue. The property has an easement over some of the Macarthur house's site, so that's actually how Fuller Avenue gets all the way back there. And Macarthur House could keep their access through to Trader Joe's, through to the interior of the block, which I really understand is the city's main intent with mid-block walkways and mid-block streets is to retain as much access and travel and circulation through these blocks. So if we just take away cutting off Fuller Avenue, we solve a lot of issues with this design and with this circulation and other property owners' concerns, though not all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any emails that have been sent that need to be read into the record concerning this issue?
Not at this time.
All right, very good. I think at this time, well, before I close are there any questions to staff concerning any rebuttals to what has been said on the live discussion? Okay.
For us, of staff, I had one, Lex, if you know, why are we considering the Macarthur building historically significant? Does anybody know? Is it just because it's mid-century modern?
Babs, I don't know the history of that building, but we hire qualified people to do those surveys. That survey was redone in 2013 by Sherry Ellis of Certus. Okay. She's highly qualified, highly knowledgeable. The last survey that you looked at that she did was the university district that I brought through, I don't know, a year or so ago. The city pays people to do that. They're professionals. She determined that building is an eligible contributing structure.
Because?
I don't know the history of it, so I can't tell you. And then it's...
I'll just chime in and say that with the 2012 and 2013 RLS update, the period of significance was altered to include mid-century modern buildings within the Central City Historic District. And so the Macarthur then became eligible contributing with that period of significance alteration in 2012. And then just as an aside, to educate me, here's a landowner stating, I want off this survey. I mean, I want off this designation. Is that a possibility? Do we see that ever happening? Well, there's a process, right? There would be a couple avenues to get that accomplished. So it would be a map amendment to remove the historic preservation overlay. Mm-hmm. And those are approximately 8 to 12 months. We could send you the information on how to initiate that process. The decision-making body, city council. The other process would be a potential demolition argument and an argument of whether or not it should be a contributing structure to the district.
And a process through the SHPO, I believe, because that survey has been submitted and accepted by the Park Service.
Yeah, the National Park Service would be updated if that anything happened to that building, because the keeper would delist it at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Before we go on with any further questions, Mr. Chair, it's not clear whether we closed the public hearing.
I did close the public hearing.
All right. We can continue with questions, and then per the policies and procedures, the applicant has an opportunity to respond to the comments.
All right. Thank you. Since the public hearing is closed, is there a rebuttal from the applicant?
All right, I'll try to keep this succinct again. As far as the comments about being respectful to the other properties, while we went through this, we believe that our project as designed is respecting the most adjacent one in terms of architectural styling and using that common court where they face each other. I'll pull up the elevation where we gave this facade and this other side some of the very similar mid-century modern vertical emphasis details, and even the coloring of the fiber cement panel mirrors that of the Macarthur house to kind of have some sort of relationship. And then in terms of property lines to the adjacent properties, as you can see, we have moved our building actually farther away in all cases than the existing building. In the case of modern display, our new building footprint is about 12 feet back, and then the warehouse building, almost all the way around, we've moved it 15 feet farther.
Yours is the blue line?
Correct.
Okay.
There's another one that may be clearer, but this one, well, no, it's not going to be. This one shows you the existing, this warehouse is built right on the property line. So that white, roof, that's the roof of the warehouse, and it's sitting, it's on that property corner of the mansion and the Macarthur house, and we have moved that, our property line off of that, to give it some breathing room and provide a little bit more space, as well as the massing that's been stepped down on 7th East.
But on that, you have right where your cursor is.
Yes.
Is that Folger?
Yes, this is Fuller Avenue.
Fuller, sorry. And
Right.
that's still going to have access to Trader Joe's?
No, in this proposal, right, in our design, we are building a building right here on Fuller Avenue.
That's where you get into your
Correct.
parking.
So this would become, there's a cross-access agreement between these two properties that straddles this property line. And we would use that. They would access their property. We would provide this as a city-required 24-foot one drive aisle, so everyone can pull in and out of these stalls and then access the garage entry. So,
So they come in on that street and they go out on that street
and they can
because
go
it
out.
would
It'll
become
be
a dead
two-way.
end.
Yeah, it'll be a two-way.
That's a nightmare. I'm sorry.
The portion of Fuller that's within the blue lines, does your client own that?
Yes.
Clear and free?
I mean, legal issues I can defer to, but as far as my understanding, we do.
So-
We can't have comments being yelled during this part.
But that appears to, according to what the public comment said, there is potential litigation with respect to that piece.
I'm aware of that there is scheduled litigation, not litigation, but some sort of meeting held in the future. As far as designing the properties as they are now, we believe, and the city believes that the property owner has the right to develop that property.
Yeah, and you designed it accordingly.
Correct. Yeah, that's how we're designing it right now.
Where is the primary entrance to the structure, or which entrance would you define as the primary?
So that would be probably the leasing office, which is this southeast corner, which is by the public, the visitor parking is here. So I got to go one more set. Sorry, these files were so big, I had to separate it into a bunch of parts. So the leasing office would take place here. Not that it would get the most traffic. I mean, there are people that go in and out of leasing offices, but as far as pedestrian and the most public part of the building, which is going to be the lobby and leasing area, that's in this southeast corner. just it's farther away from the gas station and more mid-block, and trying to get a little more activation, in the middle of 7th East.
And is that the volume that has the rooftop on it?
Yes.
Okay.
That volume right there. Let's see if I can navigate this. That'd be this one here, which has been treated a little more commercially, as you can see on the ground, with a little bit wider expanses of glass, and that'd be this volume here.
Does the mansion have any connection to Fuller Street, or are they in and out off of 7th East?
Not directly. I could show you let's go back. I'm going to be so good at this by the end. So that's, here's the mansion is here, and Fuller Avenue is here. So it really, the shared access ends about 80 feet back, and then Fuller Avenue continues on with kind of posted signs. But
maybe this isn't a question for you, but I'm just wondering if currently the mansion has access from Fuller Street, or if their only access is from 7th East.
Yeah, the only way to get, sorry, yes. Sure.
Can I ask that of the commenter?
What's the question?
I'm just curious. The mansion, with respect to traffic issues, does it have any connection to Fuller Street, or is it only access from 7th East?
So the chair would have to authorize somebody to answer that question.
Can I answer? There's no vehicular connection from Fuller to the mansion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But there's, 244 apartments?
It's closer to 250, so
Okay,
249,
250,
yeah.
so that's 250 cars, maybe more, 300 cars.
Well, we're less than 1-to-1 parking ratio, so yeah,
Sure.
but yeah.
That's 300 cars plus who's ever visiting. And then the working people there at the, the mansion has its own dealio, but the Macarthur building, that's a lot of cars coming in and out of there.
Have you had discussions with engineering, city engineering, and traffic related?
We have received comments from engineering and traffic, nothing related to like volume of traffic.
It's a major intersection.
We talked to, the parking, Michael Berry in transportation did, have a comment that we needed to resolve this area so that people could come in and out instead of having it just be a one-way, because right now with the angled parking, they need to back out and go through, which our proposal resolves that with a two-way access here.
All right. I believe it's time really to close this and move into executive session. Thank you. Thank you. I want to ask a couple of questions from legal.
Yes.
That's not for this case. That's the next one. The issue that was brought up, there wasn't anything in the staff report that indicated that there was a right or an access way through the site from east to west. There wasn't anything that was in here regarding that. So can I take it that the applicant has satisfied all of the requirements that were placed in front of it?
I would rely on staff to give you an answer as to whether all of the requirements have been met. But as to the access, we have to presume that what's on county records is accurate. So there have been claims of prescriptive rights and public use dedication, and those are things that neither I nor staff nor any of you are in a position to determine. Those things are clearly within the jurisdiction of the courts to decide, and we have to rely on the courts to determine whether there are those rights for the adjacent property owners. At this point, there is litigation. I'm aware of it. There's been no effort to halt these proceedings. And, at this point, we have to proceed as if what we see on the county records is correct. I know that There was one portion of Fuller Avenue that recently was the subject of a quiet title action where the court did determine that the applicant owns that section of Fuller. There's another section, this is broken into like 3 parts. There's another section that per the property records appears to be owned by the applicant, and then a third section that appears to be owned by an adjacent property owner. So it's complicated, but at this point we presume that what we see in the county records as far as property ownership is correct.
Very good. And then the last thing, and Lex, when I was reviewing everything, there was only 2 issues that were subject to further discussion, and that was future lighting that was to be worked out and future landscaping was to be worked out. So in my review of everything concerning the design standards, everything was checked off as complies.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Commissioners, discussion?
I just had 2 items that I would like to ask staff, which are similarly were written as complies, or just outside of the public discussion. I'm not sure if I should wait. Sorry. I'm not sure if I should wait until after this. Do we want to specifically focus on public comment?
I think now is the right time. We're an
Okay.
executive,
Okay,
so we
awesome.
can talk amongst ourselves.
I think just as far as design, one of the design guidelines that this is subject to for the multi-unit dwelling is just that the primary entrance should be prominent, and there is some ornamentation, but I just wanted to ask more about staff's determination on compliance with that specific guideline. And then as well as mechanical equipment being screened. I didn't know if that could be conditioned since some of the balconies are going to have glass railings and the glass on the rooftop, potential for maybe personal mechanical equipment being displayed from that, from 7th. So I just wanted to maybe ask about those conditions being met fully or if that was addressed with the applicant.
Planning staff asserts that the entrances off of 7th East are adequate in terms of meeting those design guidelines. And in terms of mechanical equipment, I believe that it will all be located on the roof. Is that correct? Yeah. The mechanical equipment. Yeah, we don't want air conditioner or compressor units on the balconies. Is that kind of where you're going with that?
Does the city include like grills or other equipment like that as mechanical equipment, or how is that defined?
We don't regulate like personal.
Okay.
That falls
items
on
like that.
property management.
Property management.
Mhm.
I have a question, perhaps for staff in terms of the process. It was mentioned that there was no work session associated with this project. What triggers a work session, and why are some and not others?
Yeah, the magnitude of a project does not determine whether or not we schedule a work session with you. So yes, this is a big project. That doesn't mean we schedule a work session with you. We schedule work sessions with you when we as staff get to a point with an applicant that we are not seeing eye to eye, and we want you to weigh in on their design or whatever it is that is before us. So if there were issues with this that I, as the planner reviewing this, and the applicant could not see eye to eye on, and it was something that we were in a position that we thought we couldn't support it, we would probably schedule this for a work session. That is not the case here. We have reviewed this and they clearly meet standard. That's why we didn't schedule a work session.
There are also other circumstances that constitute a work session, which is when applicants request one.
That's correct.
Yeah. We don't always have the capacity to schedule those, but typically if an applicant knows they're going to have issues meeting design guidelines or standards, they would request a work session to work through those issues with you.
Okay. Kenton?
Yeah, the only issue that I have concern with is that of the traffic and the access. However, that's not in our purview. That is clearly the applicant owns a chunk of Fuller, and whether or not there's a prescriptive right of access is not for us to decide, as Paul has said. That will play itself out in other arenas. So I think we have to just set that aside and judge this on its design merit and its appropriateness. And I think they've done a fine job in what they've designed and proposed to put there. I have no hesitation about approving this project and let the other things play out as they will.
Did you have any comment?
I would agree 100% with Kenton. I abhor this traffic issue that's going to turn into Chick-fil-A and Sugar House. I'm serious. That is an incredibly, I mean, the count of cars that go through that intersection and the craziness that's around there this is just ridiculous. But it's not in our purview, as Kenton said, for us to do anything about that. So does it tick off everything else? Sure, it's just another box of houses.
I actually want to disagree that this isn't completely in our purview because reading, so I want to read two of the bullet points in our standards that are in the staff report. 12.2, the historic street pattern as the unifying framework for a varied range of lot sizes and buildings should be preserved and reinforced. Retain historic alignments and widths wherever possible. Plan the site to avoid adversely affecting the historic integrity of this pattern. And then 12.3 is the bigger one. The historic street pattern, including the network of public and private ways within the street block, should be retained and reinforced. Secondary streets and alleys maintain the historic permeability within the street block as a means of access and a historic setting for direct and quieter street frontage for smaller buildings and rear access to the property and to accessory buildings. That keeps going. An attractive focus for community social interaction and an alternative and more intimate choice of routes, helping to reinforce a walkable and livable neighborhood. So, I mean, in my mind, the proposed development is counter to that design guideline. And I'm reading from page 18 of the staff report and 19.
John, I think you make an excellent point there. I'm just not sure it applies to this block. I don't think we've had that character on that block for 50 years or more. Even before probably since the mansion was built.
What protection do we offer an historic mansion in the midst of a commercialized few blocks within an historic district? We don't tear it down. We just block their views on north, south, east, and west? We just box it in. But it's still historic.
I'm gonna round out what Kenton was saying earlier, and I started this discussion. I had a discussion with staff, actually with the director prior to this evening, and it had to do with the fact that is this in our purview or is it not? Except for what was just read, what I was instructed was it was not in our purview. Reading through the staff report, there was nothing that indicated that except what was just read, and that has to do with the contributing character of accessory streets and alleyways. So at this point, I'm gonna open this for a motion from the commissioners. If you need a motion sheet, I have that before me.
Well, I've got one here. I'll make a motion. Based on the analysis and findings in the staff report that the standards for approval of a certificate of appropriateness involving new construction in a local historic district have been substantially met, testimony in the proposal presented, I move that the Historic Landmark Commission approve the request for new construction located at approximately 424, 436, and 438 South 7th East and 445 South Green Street. And this is in respect to PLN HLC 2022-00233.
Thank you, Kenton. Is there a second? So, Commissioners, there's been a motion raised. It has not been seconded. Is there further discussion concerning this case?
I would, I'm torn because staff knows more of the ins and outs of the project. They obviously looked at it very carefully, and they did note that they felt that it complied. However, what John raises, the interior character of the block and the existing traffic patterns, in addition to recognizing the potential hellacious traffic congestion and safety issues that traffic congestion brings, I'm very hesitant. I'm very hesitant about approving it without more discussion on those issues.
I'll go ahead and second it so we can vote. I think that's appropriate. If you're okay with that?
Yes. Thank you, Babs. And let's go in order. Babs?
Abstain.
John?
No.
Aiden?
Yes.
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 Thank you. Kenton?
No.
Michael is not here. Amanda?
No.
We have one abstention, 3 noes, and 1 yay. This motion does not pass.
Okay, Mike, could I speak for a moment? Reason I pulled back on that for a minute is maybe we should have some discussion about encouraging the applicant to seek a solution that maintains access through Fuller. What do people think about that?
Well, doesn't this
Can we do that?
Now that we denied the application, doesn't this now limit?
You didn't deny the application, you just denied the motion to approve it. There has not been a motion made to deny that it has...
And I voted no, so we could continue the discussion. I might have jumped the gun on that. Now, not that I'm opposed to going back and making the motion again, but I think we should have more time to discuss this. So John, talk to us about how you might...
Yeah, I mean, I think the staff report is great. I just want to start by saying that. I always appreciate how thorough the staff is in the report. I disagree that the block pattern standard is being met in this proposal. I don't think it's being met by the letter or the spirit of the ordinance. So, and you've got a lot of concerned people who are stakeholders in the historic district who are saying this isn't right, and I tend to agree. It's a big building, and it cuts off any access east-west through the block. So if you're in the corner near Gilgal Gardens and you want to go to Trader Joe's, now you got to walk all the way around a big residential building, and it just seems the whole shape of the thing is weird. It's like the one across the street on 7th East, the Liberty Boulevard, which is like a oddly shaped building because that's the parcels that they were able to acquire. That's not in a historic district, so.
we reviewed that one.
Did we?
Yeah, that and the one facing Fifth South, whose name just escapes me, the gentleman.
Okay.
So I voted yes because I agree fully with Amanda, like exactly what you say. I think staff has done a great job of showing how it meets the standards, and I think that it is a successful structure. However, it is, we should be questioning the standard that John brought into place. However, if we are looking at the alleyway, I think it would be helpful, as Kenton said, to have more information on maybe when the alleyway went in. However, isn't this currently posted as not an allowed access point? There's many signs, as this is what we're understanding. There's an access agreement that is not public access to the Trader Joe's. And if this, let's say this was, we come to a compromise, there's like a sky bridge or something that connects the structures, would that still aid in the porousness of the block that guideline is trying to hit? Will the public still be able to access that? Will that be able to help what we are flagging as something that would be an issue? So maybe then that's the case where we get more additional information and we sort of bring this back next month.
That's an interesting point, Aidan, is that people have been talking as if it's a public access currently, which it's not. And so perhaps they're asking for something that really doesn't exist and hasn't existed for many years and would therefore be irrelevant to the basis of this project.
The comment that I wanted to make, and I think it's in line with what you're just about to say, is that there's the rights of that street have not been determined, or there's a court case or there's litigation that is asking that question. So whether it is as we think or as it has been stated, that hasn't been determined, and that's really not for us to say yay or nay to. We can agree or disagree with it, but that's really not in our purview. What is in our purview is what's in front of us, and I agree with you that staff has done a very good job with this report. We can only judge, or we can only vote on the validity of that report that's been done. Second thing is this is the Historic Landmark Commission. That doesn't mean that this is going to be it. It goes from here, then it goes to, it goes to City Council, it goes to other boards before.
No, this is your decision. This is not.
I know this is our decision, but there is additional appeals that can happen past our recommendation or our vote one way or the other. And all we can do as a Historic Landmark Commission is do what is in front of us.
Correct.
That's all my point is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we can agree or disagree with some of the fine points, and I think we do. But based on the staff report, I think that's what our vote ought to be.
Right, Mr. Chair, if I could just weigh in for a second. Correct. The presumption is, with respect to the access, the presumption is that this is private property, that at this moment the property owner could fence off or build a structure on there right now, provided that it met all of the other requirements. So I appreciate what Commissioner Iwanowski brought up about historic patterns of circulation and whatnot. But the fact is generally private streets, more often than not what I see in Salt Lake City with private streets is that those are rights of way that many people have explicit access rights to. And I don't know if maybe we were thinking of the general notion here. Honestly, I don't know what was behind that certain provision. I'm not doubting it. I'm just saying that I don't know what the considerations were on that. But the property owner right now could go and block off that access unless the court in the current litigation told them that they could not do that. So it's something certainly to consider, that the rights are presumed. And I don't know if in the litigation that recently concluded on the quiet title to the western portion of Fuller, if the adjacent property owners were notified of that, but that's fresh. I mean, I think that was that's within the last 4 or 5 months that the court determined in that quiet title action that the applicant owns that section of Fuller. So I think that we need to be careful when it comes to property rights in saying that we somehow need to respect a thoroughfare there when the courts haven't told us yet that we need to. And the parties who have brought the litigation are certainly within the rights to ask the court for a temporary restraining order, which, to my knowledge, has not happened yet. Here we are.
Very good. Thank you. So, commissioners, I'm going to ask the question again. Is there a motion concerning this that's before us?
Yeah, I'll reintroduce the motion. With respect to PLNHLC 2022-002-33, Station 424 multifamily residential development, based on the analysis and findings in the staff report that the standards for approval of a certificate of appropriateness involving new construction in a local historic district have been substantially met, testimony in the proposal presented, I move that the Historic Landmark Commission approve the request for new construction located at approximately 424, 436, and 438 South 7th East and 445 South Green Street.
Thank you, Ken. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Hayden? The motion has been put forward and seconded. Let's have a vote, please. Babs?
Abstain.
John?
Yes.
Hayden?
Yes.
Kenton?
Yes.
And Amanda?
Yes.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Very good. All right, so the vote was 4 yes and 1 abstain. The motion passes. Moving on, case number 2. Thank you. Good evening, Brooke.
Commissioners, if I could just
Good evening.
sort of a footnote to the last thing. The applicant knows that they are proceeding with risk when there's litigation involved, so.
That's the point that I was saying. It's not over until it's over.
100%. Yep. Right.
It's not over till they build a Chick-fil-A next door.
Brooke, you're up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And good evening, Commission. I'm sorry. Is this better?
Yes.
Okay. So this project request is for approval of a minor alteration for a vinyl fence and trellis at 665 South, 600 East. The property is in the RMF 30 zoning district, as well as the Central City Local Historic District. And the property is currently under enforcement as a portion of the proposed fence has been constructed without a fence permit or the required minor alteration certificate of appropriateness. And staff is recommending the commission deny the request. To provide you with some more details, the proposal is for the construction of a 4-foot tall white vinyl picket scallop design fence, as well as an 8-foot, 8-inch tall vinyl trellis in the front yard and side yard of the property as shown in the images. This is an image of the property taken in June. The property does contain a historically contributing structure that is listed as eligible contributing in the Central City survey. You can also see the proposed fence as well and the portion that has been constructed. This is another recent image of the property showing the proposed fence as well as the character of the streetscape of the area. Prior to the construction of the vinyl fence, there was a wood picket fence and trellis that was removed from the property in 2021 to allow for the construction of the vinyl fence. So that's what these images are showing. Salt Lake County Archives did provide this photo. So this photo indicates that the previous wood picket fence and trellis were not originally constructed with the dwelling. However, the previous fencing was reflective of the design and materials historically used for historic fencing in the city. The applicable standards of approval are located in 21A 34020H and also located within Attachment E of the staff report. And the applicable residential design guidelines are located in Chapter 1 Site Features. The design guidelines indicate that painted wood picket, wrought iron, and wire fencing materials were historically used to enclose front yards in the city. Guideline 1.3 states that for replacement fences, materials similar to that of an original should be used, specifically stating the previously mentioned painted wood picket, simple metal, as well as traditional, simple metal such as traditional wrought iron or wire. Additionally, guideline 1.4 states that vinyl fencing is inappropriate where it would be visible from the street. So staff found that the proposed fence does not meet the guidelines as it is highly visible from 600 East as shown in the photo. And attachment F further discusses the guidelines. Based on the analysis and findings outlined in the staff report, it is planning staff's opinion that the proposed vinyl fence and trellis do not meet the applicable standards of approval, and staff recommends that the Historic Landmark Commission deny the request. I'm happy to take any questions, and the applicant has also prepared a presentation if you'd like to hear from them at this time.
Well, I'll just ask a very straightforward question. The materials that are acceptable are wrought iron, a wire fencing, and wood fencing.
And wood picket, yeah.
Wood picket.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what's outlined as acceptable
In the
material
guidelines,
for
yeah,
fencing.
that's correct.
Very good. Commissioners, any other questions for staff?
Brooke, maybe I missed it. Could you go over a little bit of the history of this enforcement again, please?
Yeah, so a portion of the fence was already constructed, and there was no permit pulled, so there was a stop work order placed on the property, and there was no certificate of appropriateness either. So the applicant has been working with planning staff, and since the proposal did not meet the standards, staff cannot approve it administratively, so it's being referred to the Historic Landmark Commission for a determination.
Very well. No other questions? Then let's hear from the applicant, please. Would ask that you state your name, please, and there is a 10-minute duration, please.
Absolutely. She's going to drive for me. My presentation won't be as fun as pretty as the last one, but yes. As you can see in slide number 1, my name's Carrie Gardner. I live at 665 South, 600 East, and I do appreciate you allowing me to come and speak to you today. And this is my statement. If you go to slide number 2, in the early 2000s, I had the opportunity to live on 600 East, and I fell in love with the neighborhood. It was a time when people were investing in homes that had been multifamily and returning them to single family, and that was a fun time for me to live there. I moved to Arizona, and when I moved back, I was delighted that there was a house available on 600 East for me to purchase. And it had gone under contract and fallen through several times, and so I finally was able to get an offer accepted. And if you look at slide number 3,
oh, sorry. Let me see.
Sorry about that. If you look at slide number 3, you'll see the reason that people kept backing out of this 132-year-old home was because of the foundation beams in disrepair, a 3-story tree that was undermining the foundation, rotted wood frames, damaged exterior, and if you go to the next slide, you can see some more pictures of that. Buckling foundation, and then I think you can even see a picture of the tree on the next slide. My love of old homes and this neighborhood convinced me to be optimistic and purchase the house, and so I did. When it was time for my final walkthrough, it was the day of the earthquake, and so I was pretty scared because 2 structural engineers had told me that this house would probably not survive a major earthquake, and luckily there was so minimal damage, you know, the trim kind of pulled away, but so I forged ahead, and if you look at the next slide, that one, sorry, you're on the right one, go back one. As I was moving into my apartment, bringing my items over a period of time, I was absolutely dismayed to show up at my house and find that I had been robbed, that they had broken in and stolen more than $5,000 worth of personal items. Most of those items were compensated by the insurance company, but there were some sentimental items and they could not be replaced. And, you know, to add insult to injury, I had an 18-pack of toilet paper that was stolen from me when you couldn't buy toilet paper, so that really upset me. I did have a giant box of a pack of Kleenexes in my apartment still from Costco, so we were able to make do. Once I moved in, my first big investment, as you can see on that slide, was to hire a foundation company to come in and do footings and foundation support beams, as was recommended by the structural engineer. I also had the tree removed the next summer after I made a lot of saving to take care of that, and it broke my heart. It was a beautiful old tree. I think it was about 75 years old, but it was just destroying the foundation. So if you go to the next slide.
Three more minutes, please.
Okay, this brings us back to the fence. And what I did was take great care. I didn't realize that I needed a permit. I would have certainly done that. I've put in fences in other places and never had one, so apologies for that. But what I did was take great care to go out and replicate the style of fence that was already there, the picket fence, the trellis, the things that added character to the home that made it look so cute, because it's not a Victorian, it's pretty plain. And I started installing those items, and then of course I found out that I needed to get a permit. If you go to the next slide, you'll note that just 4 structures up at, I believe it's 633 South, 600 East, there is a vinyl fence. So I would have had no reason to know that you couldn't have a vinyl fence on my street. Also, I just want to note, if you'll go to the final slides, I absolutely respect the historic district, and I want to make my house look adorable. I want a fence that is durable and strong and keeps my property safe. I've had items stolen from my front yard. I've spent $3,200 on fence materials. I've spent $1,200 on labor. And I know that once this fence is done, people will say, what a cute vinyl, or what a cute picket fence in front of this cute house. During the Central City historic tour, so many people stopped by as I was out taking care of my plants and flowers and told me what a beautiful fence I was installing and how well it complemented my home. I am concerned, you know, about the focus in this neighborhood where we want people to purchase these homes, stay in these homes, invest in these homes, and do the things that make them feel safe, and not have to repaint a fence every year and have it rot and go into disrepair as it was when I moved in. These lower 2 pictures are the 2 homeless people that camped out in front of my house just this summer, and of course that's 6th South and 6th East. I had a man walk between our buildings and pee on the house. I caught that on my Ring camera. The neighborhood's not the same, and I really wanted to finish my investment and have my home look nice and keep the materials that I was installing, because I do think they look very nice and complement the home. The last thing I'll quickly say, if I have time, I had read this code, which is Utah 000-66379 JD 21A ... It says landscape structures such as arbors, walls, fences should address the public in a manner that reflects the character and of the historic context and the block face. And I think my fence does that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So before we move on, are there any questions for either staff or the applicant? I'll ask one question. Did you contract for having this fence put in?
I hired a gentleman who does fencing, a disabled gentleman that I was, trying to employ, and we followed the guidelines, the 30-inch to get below the frost depth. I've put in fences before, so I know what makes the fence structurally sound. I didn't realize I needed a permit, sorry. My other things, the tree, yes, I contracted. The footing and foundation beams, I contracted.
Very well, thank you. Commissioners, any other questions?
Well, the person you contracted to contract your fence here, to build your fence, they were unaware that you're in a historic neighborhood and this kind of fencing is not allowed?
He was a gentleman that was disabled that I found on Craigslist to help me. I did part of the labor myself. My
He
son...
had no knowledge of that?
No, he didn't. No, he didn't. If he would have told me, I would have said, oh my gosh, because I would have stopped immediately and tried to figure it out.
Thanks.
Very well.
You
Thank
bet.
you. All right, seeing no other questions for either staff or applicant, let's move to public hearing. Let's open the discussion. I have two cards before me. Cindy, I see you.
My name is still Cindy Cromer, and I'm going to start with the end.
Cindy, if you could get closer to the mic.
Okay. I'm going to start with the end remark in case I run out of time. I did ask the planner to send you my comments earlier today. I've done an inventory of your enforcement cases this year, which proved to be very interesting. I didn't do them for the purposes of this hearing, but for another issue. But it was interesting to see what deed restrictions accomplish, which is not very much. So there's an alternative type of durable man-made fencing that the commission has approved, which has not been discussed here. It was approved on State Street about halfway up on the west side on a Tudor duplex. It is holding up remarkably well, and it looks really good. It doesn't have the shiny effect of this type of vinyl fencing, and it was probably before any of you served on the commission. It was quite some time ago, but I get to visit it and see how well it's holding up frequently because it's very prominent on the streetscape on the Capitol Hill Historic District. So I appreciate that these cases are very difficult for the commission, but the Central City District has been in place for 31 years now, and a permit is required for fencing independent of the status in the historic district. So there are two missing steps here, the permit for the fencing and the certificate of appropriateness. I'm troubled by the argument about security because obviously the site has had the work stopped since November. And I do have property on the next block, and you do have to take steps regarding securing your property here, but the most important one is vigilance and have a presence on the block. So I think a break-in while the owner was moving is not relevant here. This is a very, very strident and prominent fence as you drive up the block, which I do numerous times a week. And I would urge you to adopt the staff report. Thanks.
Thank you, Cindy. There was another applicant, if I'm reading this correctly, Robert Torres.
My name's Robert Torres. I actually am the neighbor that lives across the street from her. So I'm the uptight neighbor where if I think somebody's infringing on another neighbor, I'll comfortably have a chat with them. We all live in that community because we love the area, we love the historical significance, but we're all, of course, doing what we can. Kind of find it interesting at a time like this when Salt Lake is becoming more and more concerned about affordable housing. while at the same time making it incredibly difficult at times and expensive to keep our homes up to the standard that we're trying to. As Carrie just mentioned, she's put a lot of her heart and soul into that home. We needed her there. We needed her intimate interest that she has in the well-being of that home. I think that she's been very consistent with that. The structure of the fence is obvious. The one code that we're all aware of on the street when it comes to historical significance is the character of the period. If you go through it, that's what comes up over and over again. It is the character. That fence that y'all showed, in my mind, seems well consistent with that. When it comes to the subject of vinyl, I gotta tell you, that seems more antagonistic than helpful. That ship has sailed when it comes to vinyl. We have vinyl siding, we have vinyl windows. That's over, right? We would all love to be particular, but we're dealing with funding and funding limitations on what we can do with our homes. So again, nitpicking the enforcement of a law this finite seems more like being antagonistic than helpful to the community. We need her fence, we need her looked after. It is not just an arbitrary concern. And it is definitely more beautiful than what was there. So
Thank you. So I don't believe there's any other live comments. I've not received any other cards. I want to ask staff if there's been any emails that need to be read into the record.
No emails.
Very good. At this time, let's close the public hearing. There's no time for a rebuttal of the applicant. If you'd like to offer any rebuttal or offer any response, I don't know that that's applicable, since the people that were speaking were in favor of what you're doing.
There was one comment in
Was there?
There was one comment in supporting the staff report.
Very good. Thank you.
I've got a question for staff then, please. How long has vinyl been addressed and discouraged or prohibited in the ordinance?
I'll defer to management to answer that.
All right.
Decades.
Thank you.
Before my time, that's for sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. At this time, I think it's time to close the public hearing. And let's move to executive session. So this is the session. It's closed to both the applicant and the public. And so I want to ask for a discussion from the commissioners. I'll start off by couching it. The first question that I asked Brooke, what's in front of us, and regardless of how we feel, what we're supposed to be enforcing are, does this meet the requirements of either wire, wrought iron, or wood fencing? And what's here, it simply does not. It may appear to be like a wood picket fence, but it's not the material. So I think what the real discussion is, that's the discussion more than anything else.
There's really not much of a discussion. The law is the law that we have been enforcing for some time. People come to us not for permission, but forgiveness. This has been on the books forever. Everybody's aware it's in a historic district, and these are materials. We are trying to preserve these precious properties, and vinyl is not something that we allow. And sorry about the expense, but this is what is allowed, and this is what helps keep it historic. So it's cut and dry to me.
Yeah, I second what Babs has said. I appreciate the homeowner's willingness and desire to restore the home, and I understand the materials have been bought, but the code is clear that vinyl is inappropriate, and I think we should, as a commission, be upholding that and honoring staff's recommendation, since it is so clear that vinyl is inappropriate.
I agree with what has been said regarding the vinyl. I'm curious about the alternative material that was referenced, used in the Capitol Hill District area. And it reminds me of one of the first commission meetings I listened to where there was discussion about rooftop material, and there was I hate to say it, might have been a Tesla roof, but it was the solar panels, correct? There was solar
Tesla
panels
roof.
that doubled as the roofing material, and that was saying it's not historic, it's inappropriate. However, the way that it aged in the neighborhood, the sheen came off. It wasn't glaringly. It seemed to blend with age into the neighborhood and the materials being used, and yet it's a brand new material that wasn't previously considered. So I'm wondering if there could be a material out there that's equally durable to the vinyl, and moving forward, perhaps there's some room for a different material.
Yeah, we approved that on the basis of we would see what that would look like once it went in, and then kind of craft our further future determinations based off of it. So yeah, I'm glad that Cindy brought up an alternative material, since we are sort of, the code's limiting the wood versus the cast iron. But I think if we were to see that proposal, or maybe that's something that staff could look for code, just looking forward to that. But
agreed.
Yeah, we're not seeing that right now. We're seeing the vinyl.
I think fiber cement companies are making some products that are relevant to that.
Are you talking about Hardy Board?
Yeah, Hardy and the competitors to that.
And there's all sorts of faux wood out there. Would we allow faux wood?
Not typically in the front yard, but on side and rear elevations, we're pretty flexible. We're also flexible with like type of metal. It doesn't have to be cast or wrought iron. It can be like a simple iron fence as well. So.
Great. Thank you.
I think one other relevant bit of information was presented, and that is that in any district, not just in historic district, a building permit is required to erect a fence. And if the process had been followed and a building permit applied for, the fact that it's in an historic district would have raised a red flag at that point.
And if you have someone building a fence that doesn't know you need a permit, I'm not sure they should be building a fence.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
We can't.
That's really not in our circle. The cost and the availability of contractors and subcontractors, no, not.
Commissioners, any other comments? All right. Can I have a motion, please?
Regarding making a motion for the vinyl fence and trellis at approximately 665 South, 600 East, PLNHLC 2021-101283. I'm making a motion based on the findings listed in the staff report, the information presented, and input received during the public hearing. I move that the Historic Landmarks Commission deny the minor alteration petition PLNHLC 2021-01283 as proposed, because evidence has not been presented that demonstrates the proposal complies with the following standards, which is to list what standards, factors, et cetera, were considered to recommend denial.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Aiden. Let's then vote. Let's go in
So
order,
if you
please.
vote yes, you're denying the applicants.
That's correct.
Okay,
Right.
just to be clear.
Babs?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Aiden?
Yes.
Kenton?
Yes.
And Amanda?
Aye.
Good. That's 5 votes in the affirmative to deny the application. I believe we have taken care of the 2 cases that are in front of us this evening, and I call and adjourn this meeting. Thank you.